Welcome to Diversity and Leadership, Connect with Community. This session specifically is focused on our Veterans Club. Happy Veterans Day to everybody out there. We hope you are having a wonderful day and celebration, and thank you for your service. My name is Will Torres. I'm one of the admission officers here at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Thrilled to present this panel. I think these are some of the folks who really give so much nuance to the community. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to do some brief introductions. So if you could start with name, what branch of the military you came from, and what made you want to go to business school to begin with. So maybe Nico, if we could start with you, please.
Thank you, Will. Hi, everyone. My name is Nico. I was in the Navy for 7 years. I was a submarine officer based out of Connecticut for most of my time. And for me, what I was looking for out of business school was a way that I could carry forward the leadership skills that I gained in the military and pivot directly into the business world.
Awesome, thank you. Jarrell, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jerome Mendoza, and I am in the Army. I'm actually still in, I'm active duty, and I'll be returning to the military after this. And one of the reasons why I decided to go to business school this time is to, one, be able to kind of take a break, and two, like explore some options for potential, like pretty much post-military options.
Great, thank you. Nate, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Nate Hitchcock. I'm an MBA 2 here at the business school. I'm also active duty Army like Jarrell, coming up on a decade of service for both of us here. And I came to the business school because I'm headed back to United States Military Academy to be a professor. And so some of the finance and some of the skills that I'm learning here at the business school will be applicable as I go to teach future officers of the United States Army.
And then Austin, if you round out the panel, please.
Hi, everybody. My name's Austin. I am the only MBA 1 here. I was an Army helicopter pilot like Nate. And as far as what I was looking for in business school, parallels very much with what Nico said. But part of it was, looked at having some of the leadership skills from the Army. But if you stuck a balance sheet in front of me, I was pretty useless. And so part of why MBA and why Stanford was to shore up some of those deficiencies, to be able to move forward and be dynamic in the next chapter in business.
Yeah, so we'll come back to this idea of continuing to develop some of the leadership capacities and competencies that you were using in service. But let's start with a little bit about the Vets Club. So Nico, you're one of our leaders. Can you talk a little bit about your role and then about the Vets Club?
So I am one of 2 co-presidents of the Veterans Club. And I would say we are a very small, tight-knit community on the campus. And I think that's one of the things that makes us distinct when you consider other business schools, because we tend to be on the smaller end as a percentage of the overall class. So for us, it's a very interesting dynamic where we have most of our classmates that have very little interaction with military in their previous work. And so we are the ones that are kind of the ambassadors, if you will, that is able to bridge the gap between the military and the civilians. And, we're small enough where we can kind of like also socialize and talk about our transition from the military to the civilian. So we almost are like a support group and help each other out in that manner as well.
And then can someone talk a little bit about some of the events that the Vets Club has hosted recently?
Yeah, I can tackle that. I'd say, like Nico said, it's a really unique club, and I'd say one of the benefits is that even if you're not super active, I'm not super active in the club, but even if you're not super active, everybody knows everybody, and so even the small events that we'll do. So I think every year we do a veterans retreat. Some of this has been kind of hindered by COVID, but Even some of the small events that we'll do usually, like when we first got here last year on campus, there was a Veterans Day, like our Veterans barbecue, the Vets Retreat itself. There's all kinds of different small weekend groups and stuff that you'll see. And so I think that, and Nico can tag on with any other big events, but those are the big ones that you'll see. I know we also do the LPFs that are so famous here at Stanford, which is liquidity preference function for those not familiar with that acronym, where everybody kind of gets together and has a drink. So I think you'll see that we do a lot of things, but mostly it's very family oriented is how I would describe it, just because of the size that Nico mentioned.
So Austin, curious from your perspective as our MBA one on the panel, how have you seen, how has the Vets Club supported you in your transition to campus?
It's a really poignant question, Will. I actually showed up here on crutches with 2 broken feet on September 4th. And I had kind of half-baked the idea of how I was going to get my things up to my room. And so rather than my poor fiance trying to carry some heavy furniture, I literally sent a note out in the vets thread. And about 10 minutes later, there were 10 vets and their SOs just in the parking lot that helped me unload the truck. People I didn't know me from Adam. I mean, it was literally day one of showing up, and they were out in spades. So I think to get to Nate's, family, that's a community that, one thing I think that all of us are really sensitive to is particularly, Nate and Jarrell are headed back, but for someone like Nico or someone like me, there's definitely concerns about losing that sense of community when you leave the military. And there is so much continuity, not only within the Vets Club, but I think the broader Stanford community at large. But that's just one small example. I mean, I just asked for a favor and people were there like that. And that was such an awesome way to start my MBA experience. Just to know that I had people that had my back from day one. And I was really grateful for that.
And then, so thinking about that, Nico, what inspired you to leadership within this group specifically?
I think Austin brought it very succinctly together. Is like, I just wanted to keep the family, the sense of family and belonging together going forward. And I know that given our small size as a club, it really takes a concerted effort. And so I felt motivated based off the veterans that came before us who put a really good club together. And I think especially, for most of us in the club, we're transitioning and there's a lot of ground that we feel like we have to cover because we come up to school and some of us are not familiar, the difference between like a corporate finance role and private equity. So for us, we want to make sure that we have this community where we can help each other out and learn some of the things that maybe our civilian counterparts don't have to necessarily go through.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, well, I just wanted to Nico's point, Jarrell and I sometimes, since we essentially don't have this, we kind of have a certain future. We know that what our employment's going to be next. I forget about some of the awesome things that the Vets Club does to help set you up for work. And so one of the things I think that just went on or is going on here in the next week or just went on last week was what we call Vets Trek, where the Vets Club gets a bunch of people together and they go to places like this last one was at Facebook, I believe. They go to Facebook and they meet with people. So from that employment perspective, those are some other really big events that the Vets Club will be able to do. And quite frankly, they have those connections because it's vets at the companies here in the Valley that have those the connections, and they're willing to bring vets in. So not always as applicable for me or Jarrell, but that's another thing that, to Nico's point of, as you transition, another thing that I think the Vets Club does a great job of from someone that doesn't necessarily have to worry about that perspective.
Yeah, actually, Nate and Jarrell, if we can stay on that topic for a little bit, going from military to business school and then back to military, you mentioned a little bit about the why, but can you tell us a little bit more about how you see some of the lessons from business school being applicable within the military context?
Yeah, I can take that. So for me, it's actually, it has a lot of connection, especially with the job I'm going to before. So in the Army, I was a signal officer, which is mostly communications and IT management. And so a lot of like the soft skills definitely play a role in how effective you are in your job. But I'm actually transitioning over to the acquisitions core, which is more of the business arm. And so a lot of the processes, especially for some of the technical things like procurement and then even like contracting and bidding, are really important. And I think those are some of the classes that I'm looking to try to do just to get some of my, some of my feet wet to kind of figure that out, because we do deal with a lot of civilian industries and companies, at least in the job that I'm going to be going into. So I thought this was like a perfect stepping stone to kind of get more experience in the institutional realm before I actually have to practice it.
Yeah, I'll add one thing to Darrell's point. I think so there's this awesome class here that if you guys end up coming, I would highly recommend, called Leadership Perspectives. Some of the guests that attend this are people like the CEO of Yahoo, Marissa Mayer, the 20th Google employee, General Mattis is a guest speaker. I was just on class last night and we were going through this woman's leadership philosophy, and she said, what I realized is that there's only one business you're ever going to be in, and that's the business of people, right? And that's what the Army essentially is, and the military is. Just like, our technology is great, everything, but it really is the business of people. And Stanford's focus on leadership and how to interact and deal with the business of people is, it's second to none. There's so many classes that you can learn some of these soft skills, as well as the analytic skills that you need to go work at a consulting firm or anything else, but these soft skills that are going to help you be a better leader. And so I think for me, going back to the Army, to leading troops, that experience and those kinds of perspectives is going to be, what I take with me.
Yeah, not to put you on the spot, Nate, but maybe to put you on the spot, is there a particular element of that interpersonal kind of dynamic that was almost like an aha moment for you, or something that made you step back and think, how am I approaching this? Like any insights there?
Yeah, I'd say that there's two classes in particular again here. One I have not taken yet. It's actually called Interpersonal Dynamics. I think Nico mentioned he's taken it. It's otherwise known as Touchy-Feely, and is literally a class that is known all throughout the business community if you have any sort of Stanford ties. I have not taken that class yet, but a close second to that is one of our first classes called Lead Labs, where you really do start to learn about how sometimes what you mean to say and the way that you mean to lead doesn't necessarily affect people the way that you expect. And as an Army officer, like, your soldiers are never going to come up to you and be like, "Hey, boss, that's not the way that came off on me." But I think in this environment, I've really learned that, in that you have to consider the perspective from which your soldiers, or from which the people that you're leading, are really considering you, and you have to actively seek that feedback. And I think that we learn that a lot in leadership, or not leadership perspectives, but in Lead Labs. And so I think that first quarter, as early as first quarter of MBA 1, I was having those kinds of aha moments where, like, okay, man, maybe this isn't the right way to lead a group of people, or maybe you need to think about things a little differently.
Yeah, thank you. Austin, MBA 1, are you in Lead Labs currently?
I am.
Can you tell us a little bit about the experience from someone who's like actively in the in the course?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nate hit, the key highlight, right? And one of the things that's important for us is there's no doubt that we are branded differently as soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen than are some of our peers. And so one of the things that's been helpful is, okay, what are some of those things that make me different, that are either multipliers or detractors? One, for example, is I asked my Lead Lab squad, it's 6 people with whom you get really intimately close. I said, hey, if I use any military jargon or things that you don't understand, call me out on it. And it was really kind of a checking mechanism to see that, hey, there are a lot of things that I use. I used the expression last week, flash to bang. to describe something that was happening quickly. And I had one of my colleagues grab me after class and say, hey, what did that mean? And so it's really great to kind of be vulnerable a little bit. And as Nate, has eloquently mentioned, you're getting that on the spot feedback that, hey, here's the message I was trying to send. Was it received in that way? And how did it make you feel? And then so you've got the opportunity to kind of adapt and overcome from some of these challenges and to really grow. And I found myself growing exponentially through that. Actually, this morning, we were doing kind of our conclusion feedback. And it was so fascinating to hear from each of the 5 other members of my squad provide feedback, say, hey, here's what you did well, here's what I'd love to see from you, and here's how you inspired me. And every answer was different, and all of it was so useful. So I think that class is particularly helpful. And like Nate and some others, I am aspiring to take Touchy-Feely too for those same reasons, because I think it really builds off of what you learn in lead labs. And I think if I can, finally, the Stanford brand, right, is touchy-feely, right? If you think about what differentiates Stanford, I think it's really that focus on the emotional aspect of leadership. And I don't think I ever understood, and I'm still learning, how important that is to being a good leader. And that's something that we get really right here, I think.
So it seems like the interpersonal dynamics is a common theme that we're revolving around here. So actually, can we hear a little bit more about the class from someone who's in it? So Nico, you mentioned you took it previously. Jarrell, have you taken it? Okay, so maybe Nico, could you please tell us a little bit about the course?
And as Austin says, interpersonal dynamics really does build upon what you learn in leadership labs, and leadership labs is a core requirement. So everyone has to take leadership labs, but it's an elective. Interpersonal dynamics is an elective, and I have found out that what Nate has said, when you're leading in the military, you're never really going to get a subordinate to come up to you and be like, sir, ma'am, it did not, what you said affected me in way X, Y, and Z. And being able to have a deep dive on that and interpersonal dynamics, I found myself where I have said something where I intended to do X, and then a classmate of mine says that he or she felt Y. And I was kind of like taken back, and then it allowed me to have an open dialogue with them to figure out, it could be down to like how I said it, the tone, if there was a way that like the body language. So these are things that I could not imagine in any other environment, how I would be able to learn this. And I really enjoy the experiential learning that we get in interpersonal dynamics, because it allows each individual to find out what they need to work on and what they are good at in order to move forward.
Nice. Awesome. So as we were talking a little bit about classes, are there any other classes that you found particularly insightful, useful, thought-provoking? So maybe we can start with Jarrell to put you on the spot. Welcome to Cold Calling.
No worries. I actually have 2 in mind, and they actually were electives that I took last spring as an MBA 1. I was pretty lucky to take them. The first was Reputation Management, and that was with Allison Kluger. And I thought that was amazing to just take it like a look back and, kind of self-assess like how you perceive yourself, but as also how others perceive you. And it was really cool. We did a project, a paper too, where you actually surveyed people in your class and like people outside. And you were able to write a reflection paper on it. And I thought that was really interesting to see, especially over the years. You can go as far back as you wanted. And I definitely went actually as far back from like high school and college to try to get some of that perspective to see how I've changed. And then the second one would be diverse leadership, which was actually a co-led class for the education school. And again, I think I'm huge on the leadership and the soft skills, because again, I think that's one of the most important things you can learn not only here, but you can bring back to the military and almost any industry that you go into. And that actually helps too with your leadership. We had to write leadership philosophy stories. And so we had to almost write, it's almost like a mini talk where you're able to give about like a 10-minute monologue as to like where you believe your leadership came from and where you think you're going. And again, I thought that type of introspection and being able to kind of like work with your classmates on that was super valuable and something I would definitely want to take as I move forward.
Nice. Anybody else?
I can give some perspective here. Austin is like just, crushing through, poor guy's just crushing through the mandatory requirements right now. So I think the best people to answer this question is probably Nico and myself and Darrell, because once he makes it out of this quarter and half of next quarter, he's really his eyes are gonna be opened up, and he's gonna have so many cool opportunities. Look, I mean, Stanford, look, the classes here are phenomenal. Not much else needs to be said other than the guy that won the Nobel Prize a few weeks ago works in the business school. One of them, right? He's a lecturer in the business school. So I think that, one of the classes that Nico and I are in right now is taught by a gentleman by the name of Keith Hennessy. Any one of his classes are phenomenal. He's known as being one of the best professors at the business school. And by the way, he happened to be the economic advisor to George W. Bush, to George W. Bush. So, I mean, like, there's so many classes, right? Whether it's, and what I really love about the MBA program is that you can take a class. Darrell and I took a class in sports business management. Both of us were Division I athletes in college. We took a class in sports business management. At the same time, you can be taking an American policy class. There's just so much that you can do here outside of your traditional business roles. But what's crazy is all of them just refine those leadership skills and those skills of working with people. I think Nico said before everybody logged on, Nico was saying that he uses touchy-feely and some of the skills he learned there in one of the classes that we're in together now, one of Keith Hennessy's classes that we're in together now. He uses those skills more than he did in touchy-feely in this class because everything is just so parallel. So, I'd say I'd challenge you to find a class that isn't good, is what I would say to Will's question.
Awesome, thanks. Now that we can get academics out of the way, let's actually shift gears to what's probably really on people's minds. And we're gonna start jumping into the Q&A box. So I'll try to keep on a slightly chronological track at first, and then from there, we'll see where the conversation takes us. So as you were thinking about, different MBA programs, are there any tips for how you translate some of the unique military skills you've had, like during the application process? How did you approach that? I know, Austin, you talked about like jargon right now in your classes, but for the rest of you as well, like how are you thinking about translating the cultures?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that first, Will. So I think a big part of it is just reliance on the community. Given that today is Veterans Day, I've had some really thought-provoking conversations with classmates who sent messages of support and just kind of, hey, thanks for sharing your story. And I have found that I'm even more grateful of my classmates that have been willing to share their stories with me. And I think that this is it's a very symbiotic process, in that your classmates are really willing to pour into you as a part of the community here. So as you figure out, okay, hey, when I told my dad I was getting out of the Army, it was because I got hurt. And I remember the first phone call I had with him, and he goes, dude, that's a bummer. What are you even good at? And I see you laughing. He was just kind of, he was yanking my chain a little bit. But it was a great point. And, it's okay. How do I shore up what my skills are and translate those? And a big part of that translation process is learning from your classmates, right? And it's saying there is such a mixed bag here. Will and the admissions gurus do such a wonderful job of making a GSB salad, right? There's not too much lettuce. There's not too much tomato. You get the metaphor, right? But because that is done so carefully, no two MBAs are the same. And by MBAs, I mean students, and everybody's got a unique and diverse perspective to bring. So I have gotten really deep into the bowels of just some really authentic, genuine, deep conversations with my classmates that have taught me a lot about myself and about what my, passions, desires, and aspirations are moving forward. But similarly have said, hey, could I see myself doing what someone else did or a role like that? And beginning to kind of hash out, hey, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And who do I expect to be 18 months from now when MBA graduation comes around?
Yeah, and I would have to say as well, and I want to make sure that folks on this call know how much appreciation I have. So the Veterans Club, I know Nico's been part of this as well, have been helping us on the admissions side understand kind of what are some of the themes and different cultural elements there are within the military and among the different branches. So there's a lot of back and forth as well with our students helping us do a better job to continue creating the salad, as Austin mentioned. So thank you, Nico, and all of your predecessors before you for helping us do our job better. Cool. Kind of along the same thread of, as we're thinking about business school, do any of you have recommendations on how to prepare if admitted? So are there like particular courses or topic areas that either might have been helpful or you think could be helpful to make sure you hit the ground running in the classroom?
Yeah, I can quickly answer this. I think that depending on how long you've been out of school, like, I mean, I had been out of school for like 8 years prior to coming here. So I think, and I shared this view with Austin when him and I were talking before he got in here. I think that you're gonna feel a little bit behind the first quarter, I think, if depending on how far or how long. But what I'd say is there's so much help here, and there's so many people that want to see you succeed. Whether it's a professor holding office hours or whatever, I really think that it's not a huge hurdle. I really don't think that I don't know that you need to, I mean, obviously you probably need to do some stuff to prepare for the GMAT and score well on that. And I think that if you've done that stuff and prepared for the GMAT and that kind of things, I think when you get here, you'll see, this is just my experience, but you'll see that there's so many people willing to help, from MBA 2s willing to help MBA 1s, professors, TAs. There's a lot of people that are willing to help get you back into that mindset. And after the first quarter, I felt very comfortable being back in an academic world, is what I would say. At least that's my experience. I don't know. I'll leave it open to the rest of the panel.
Nate, you actually bring up, so transition kind of into another question here that, since we're on this track, I really want to dig into it. Starting business school, like that feeling of that you might be behind, has anybody tapped into some of these support resources to help you in the classroom? Like whether in the classroom or like transitioning to the kind of business school culture?
I can answer some of that. And so what's interesting is, I think for me personally, I know I talked to Nico and probably some of the other vets, but I felt the struggle, at least in the beginning. And I think it was, again, hard being 8 years out to just like remember what it is like to open a book and to have to go to class multiple times and have homework, and not just have a job where you can leave that work at home, work in the office, and then like instead of having homework as soon as you get back, and then also trying to juggle that with all the social events that we try to do. And I think some of the things that I tapped into were definitely the teachers and the faculty. I think they're, like Nate had said, like they're more than willing to help. I know that we had, and I'm not sure actually if the MBA ones had it this time, but we had like an autumn-based level tutor course program. So they actually were able to, on like certain days of the week, they would have tutors who were MBA 2s who would help specifically with the mandatory classes that they have, which I thought was really helpful, because especially if, depending on your time, there's like a huge block that you could just go in and kind of like walk in whenever. And then I actually dealt with a lot of informal. And so again, there's so many classmates that, that have been in the background of finance or accounting, and, just turning around and just being like, hey, like I literally didn't understand any of those terms that just came out of his mouth. Can you help me with that? People are more than willing to do that, even over a coffee chat. And I think that's actually even too where I got to meet a lot of my classmates just through that informal helping of classes, and then being able to get to know them on that personal level.
Anybody else?
I would, just to add something a little bit different, when I think about transition and preparing for school, I honestly have encouraged all of my peers and the year groups below me who have been admitted and are wondering what to do between separation and coming in. And I honestly will advocate, there's a lot of administration that comes with separating from the US military. And at least in the Navy, you can't separate, or you have to begin the process no earlier than 9 months out. And I personally believe you really do need that time, because there is a lot that you're not familiar with, and like trying to get, different areas, which branch of the military you are in line with, like where you're going to school and all that. Like there's a lot to deal with that. I know that some people, because of the timing, they got caught up in that. And so anything you can do to prepare yourself, I would say life administration wise, before you get here, so you're not dealing with everything, the humming and the buzzing of GSB, and dealing with like separating from the military, it would be a huge stress reliever, in my opinion.
I love the way you phrase it as life administration. For the other panelists, any other tips on like life administration kind of as you transition to like school?
Yeah, I would say 100%. Nico has a fantastic point. I PCS'd out here, so the Army moved me out here, so I didn't have half the issues that Nico had probably as he transitioned out of the military. So I can't even imagine, because I felt overwhelmed the first 2 or 3 weeks of there's just so much going on between academics and all the social events and everybody getting to know everybody, and your classmates are just these wonderful people. I mean, I think Austin mentioned it. Will and his team do a great job of finding like literally the best people. I mean, there's Olympic athletes in our class. There's all kinds of incredible people that come here, and you want to get to meet them. You will be overwhelmed. And so rather than take a college course or like a community college course to refresh your algebra or your calculus, if you think you need to do that, I would 100% drop that and just do what it takes to be ready to start class on day one and be ready to go, because the program will, when you get here, the program is fast and furious the first couple of weeks. And I think that Nico's point cannot be emphasized enough. Like you have to be here and have all that other stuff done so that you can just focus on what you're here to do.
There's a couple, so while we're still in like the pre-GSB kind of realm timeline, there are a couple questions about GMAT, GRE, that testing process. So just curious, when you were going through the process, do you have any like tips or recommendations on like different ways you might approach it, or kind of words of wisdom for folks who are heading into that part of their preparation?
Yeah, I'll start with that one because that's fresh in mind for me. So excellent question, and it was a question at the forefront of my mind as well when I was sitting in your chairs just a short while ago. Here's the bottom line, guys: the GMAT and the GRE both suck, and I'm sorry for using that term, but it's a hurdle you have to get over, right? And so part of that is acceptance and just say, hey, here's this mountain that I've got to climb over. Showing up at the last second and trying to scale it is not helpful. I took the GMAT for the first time. I had some complications in my situation, but I took the GMAT for the first time on January 31st, and I took it cold, and it absolutely kicked me 6 ways to Sunday. So it's a test that you've got to have a lot of respect for. It's just really challenging. So the best thing that you can do to set yourself up for success is 2 things. One, your scores are good for 5 years. So if you're not thinking about applying even this year, and you're maybe thinking, oh, I'm going to apply in a year or 2, hey, take it now. When you can focus and optimize to be successful on that test, that's going to help you, because spoiler alert, the application in and of itself is a beast, right? And so now you're juggling potentially a full-time military job. You're balancing applying to Stanford and any other institutions you want to consider. And then you're balancing getting ready and executing the GMAT. So in terms of techniques, it's not really a technique question. I just start early, right? Don't put it off, because it really is a unique thought process, and it's just one of those things that you have to do. The other piece too, everyone has their own strategy, and the best thing I can offer you is find what works best for you. Whether it's self-paced online tutoring that's asynchronous, whether it's hiring a tutor, whether it's reading a study book. Pick what works best for you and stick with it. Everyone's going to have a different way in which they attacked it. So I don't think there's a silver bullet, one size fits all approach. But the best counsel I can give you is just don't wait. You've got to be diligent, make a plan for yourself, give yourselves a long runway, and then stick to it.
Thank you. As we shift over into now you're here, how have you started to navigate finding the right career fit and or recruiting? And so this might be geared more towards some of our MBA 2s here. So how did you approach even thinking about your summer internships maybe?
I can take that one, Will, because I imagine Nate and Jerome might have an untraditional path for their since they're going back into the Army. But I got on campus and I felt like I was faced with the typical dilemma that most veterans are. It's either look at investment banking or consulting. And those are typically well suited for veterans because it's very structured, very demanding, and the hours aren't necessarily as comparable to what one would do in the military. So in terms of a stepping stone for transition, that is usually what we were told. And I did consider those, but at the end at the end of the day, I was like, I'm at business school. There's so much more for me to discover. And so I started reaching out. And so we have brown bag lunches where we have different communities, industries, companies that come onto campus and they give us a 45-minute info session. And there's also networking events. And so I was experiencing a little bit, branching out in finance, and realized that I really like the technical side since I was technical in the submarine community. But then I also liked, where tech was going. And so I was kind of quickly inundated with all these different industries. But ultimately what I decided was, I really enjoyed leading people. And there aren't that many fields directly out of business school where you can continue to lead people. And what I found out, and that's how I came across search funds, which is very unique to Stanford. Happy to go into that a little bit more, but search funds essentially is the quickest way that an MBA student can become a CEO of a company. And at the end of the day, I wanted to lead people. I wanted to lead an organization. And so that's what I ended up doing for my summer. And after graduation, I intend to start a search fund of my own.
Speaking about that kind of discovery phase, can folks talk a little bit about either the Career Management Center or how you tapped into the alumni network as part of your search?
Yeah, actually, I can actually take this one. So the Career Management Center is a phenomenal, again, not one that I use often, but the Career Management Center is an awesome place that has a ton of things, whether it's job postings. When you get here, if you're interested in doing, so there's one of 3 ways that you can fulfill what's called our global exploration requirement, one of which is to do an internship with a foreign firm for about 4 weeks. Again, this process was slightly changed because of COVID, but long story short is the Career Management Center and the Career Hub, they'll put on their different events or different firms that want to hire you. And so you'll be able to go on there, look at your applications, look at what you want to do, and you'll be able to find a lot of different things. So I think that that's fantastic. I would say, as far as reaching into the alumni network, I could talk to this a little bit better than the Career Management Center, just because I don't use that center very much, given my circumstance. Although I know that the people that do use it have extraordinary results with it. I would say that the alumni network is alive and well. I was considering doing a internship with the 49ers over the summer, before the COVID thing broke out and the NFL kind of slowed down for the summer months. I was considering doing that as just like an industry that I was interested in possibly working in after the Army. Why not just go get some experience over the summer? And really, the way it happened, it wasn't like I, started at the bottom and talked to somebody at the entry level 49ers position. The guy that's the VP for the 49ers is a GSB alum. And somebody was like, hey, if you're really interested in working for the 49ers, I'm connected to this guy. Here's an introductory email. And then why don't you just call him and you guys can talk about it. And so from me saying that I was wanting to do that or to go down that path for the summer, to actually talking to the vice president of the 49ers was 5 days maybe. And so, I think that the alumni network is definitely alive and well. And as long as your reputation at the GSB is one that you would expect it to be, if you made it in here and you can you don't rub your classmates the wrong way. There's all kinds of people. It was actually a classmate of mine that put me in touch with the VP of the 49ers. So I would say that the Career Center is a fantastic resource for anyone. The Alumni Network is an even better resource if you can find the people to tap into it.
Hey, and Will, if I could just add one piece to something Nate said, in terms of classmates as resources. So we have, for those, I'm sure most of you know what Slack is, but it's a messaging platform. And so we have a class-wide Slack. And I have seen the most hole-in-the-wall, ludicrous, outrageous questions get asked. Most niche thing, hey, does anybody know anything about the dental, whatever, right? That get answered almost instantaneously. And it gets back to that salad piece a little bit. But classmates as resources on top of the CMC, which Will mentions, and the alumni are just incredible. I mean, one that went out about 30 minutes ago, somebody was asking for a fruit picker because we have fruit trees on campus, and somebody answered it in 30 seconds. And I know that's an off the wall example, but particularly as it relates to professional things, hey, does somebody have a lead in this space, or does somebody have any industry expertise? I have never seen one of those questions fail to get answered. And that's truly a powerful asset and resource to have. And it's come through time and time again for teammates here.
I'm laughing, Austin, because when you said a dentist, I was like, oh, like at least one name popped into my head right away. So I was like, oh, I think I might know who they might be trying to connect that person with. But yeah, our community is pretty incredible. So this question actually for Austin and Nico. Nico, you might have more direct experience, and Austin, you might be looking forward to it. But talking about the recruiting process, I mentioned earlier a little bit about some of the different treks with local companies. Are there any other kind of ways to explore industry or pathways that you've seen either like opportunities for veterans specifically?
One of the things that I did not utilize until COVID hit, and it really impacted our ability to travel, because historically the Veterans Club did have veteran specific treks, like Nate mentioned earlier, to Facebook and other Bay Area companies. With the work with some members of the club, I was able to reach out to former alumni who are veterans, and as a club, we developed a database of veteran alumni from the Stanford GSB who are willing to have a discussion or help assist in either networking or recruiting for veteran club members. I was just so surprised because it wasn't seen as an ask. It was, they were asking me what more could they do, because I think it just really shows that, like, as veterans in this community, like, they were here in our shoes before us, and then they were more than happy to pass it on. So, like, for me, what really helped me going into my second MBA year is that I was able to have like a stepping stone with that alumni database that really allowed me to search and investigate the search fund community more.
Yeah, and I'll add on to what Nico says, because I'm kind of going through this process right now. Sometimes I feel like a steak, and these companies and recruiters are hungry dogs out there salivating. Here's the bottom line. People are going to be excited that you're a veteran. And that's a non-starter, right? Companies love to hire veterans. And then when they see that you're a veteran that's currently pursuing a Stanford MBA, they are over the moon fired up. And so I get emails almost every day from companies that say, "Hey, would you like to have a coffee chat with us? We'd love to meet you. We'd love you to come to event X, Y, and Z." And it's been incredible. The amount of resources that are just poured into Stanford, because people want Stanford MBAs on their team. They do. It's non-negotiable. People are excited to have a Stanford MBA. People are also excited to have a vet. And so when you've got the overlap between the two, I have found that companies are so excited to talk to not only me, but to my classmates and my peers as well that are vets. And that's huge. So in terms of recruiting resources, there's a lot of goodwill that you have both as a vet and as a Stanford MBA that people will want to pursue you. Now, that's not at the expense of saying, "Hey, you don't have to do any work to get a job." Not what I'm saying at all. But people actively seeking you out will be there and looking for you from any job you can imagine across a broad spectrum of industries. So it's a good place to be as a vet for sure.
Nice. And kind of in stream with this, and this is something that I'd open up to all of the panelists. So as we're thinking about what it's recruiting, or maybe it's community building with alumni, or how do we stay connected with each other given COVID? Any observations or reflections on your MBA experience given like the global pandemic?
Yeah, I can take this one. And I think, especially with all, with everyone trying to take their precautions and with different people having different levels of comfort with, either meeting in person or meeting in smaller groups. I think even in the Vets Club, I think we were able to do, either like smaller group chats. And I know we were trying to initiate too with like one-on-ones just to get to know our classmates even across classes a lot better. And I think that's something that we've been really resourceful and like really, just thinking outside the box when it comes to that, because I think one of the important things, especially when you come to business school, is building that community and having that network. And especially, for Austin and those MBA ones, like, for you guys starting out completely virtual is very difficult. And it's hard to build that community right away without, having to force more of those interactions, as opposed to, Nate and Nico and I, when we were, in classes and you just walk by people either like in between or going to like lunch or like even just walking out of the residences. And so I think, a lot of those smaller group interactions have been really helpful, but also like they have helped even like get people a lot closer as well. And I know the Vets Club has been pretty good about that. And then I am also in the Pride Club. And so I know we've had a good mix of that as well. And like, just, trying to see like, and try to keep and maintain those connections throughout this difficult time.
Yeah, just to add to that real quick, I think, obviously it's not as fun as our first year. I mean, I can certainly say that. I mean, to Darrell's point, you could be walking out of a class and just randomly sit down at a table and have lunch with some of your classmates. And I think that that's incredible. And that's one of the things that's great about this place. I would say that that's still happening though. Like I'm still making relationships with people that I didn't know, that well going into my second MBA year, whether it's through various classes, working on projects, whatever it is. I think that there's still people that I'm having these conversations with either over Zoom or maybe one-on-one with coffee. Stanford's done a good job about instituting testing for COVID. So I think that makes people feel a little more comfortable because everybody's getting tested, and so I think that I've still had those. I mean, I met an MBA one, actually, I met 3 MBA ones in the first month that they were here. for coffee or for a quick lunch, just to talk to them about the experience and how to go forward. MBA one, specifically MBA one veterans that had reached out to me to ask me about my experience. So I think that those things are still happening. I think that you're still making those connections. You know, I would be lying to you if I said it wasn't different with COVID. I think that we can all just be honest with ourselves with that. But I think that they're still happening, and I think that those deep relationships are still being formed.
Thank you. And then one more question before I get to claim the last one. So the MBA is definitely an investment in yourself. And so question about like financing it. If you are taking advantage of Yellow Ribbon, how did you approach the process, and who did you work with like on campus to like really understand what was going on if you needed to do so? So anybody would like to jump in there?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So there is literally a dedicated person at Stanford to walking you through the gates to get that set up. So there are multiple funding streams that you can take advantage of, and what Stanford does varies from year to year. But as of now, they do support yellow ribbon matching for those with 100% post 9/11 GI Bill. So that's something that is should be tremendously encouraging. But there are other funding streams too. So I had 100% post 9/11 GI Bill, but I'm actually using vocational rehab, so VR&E, to fund my MBA here. So it's 6 in one, half dozen the other in terms of really the resources and benefits. But the bottom line here is there is someone employed by Stanford that as a vet you have access to, and he literally has a checklist and knows all the things that you need to do to get set up with the VA team here in Oakland to get all that sorted out. And then behind the scenes, they take care of all that because it's a pretty monumental task to secure the funding, to pay for the appropriate things. It's a crummy process. But the guy named Alex here that handles it at Stanford does all of that. So it has really been super hassle-free if you do qualify for those funding streams, either as the GI Bill or for VR&E.
Any other thoughts on funding?
Add on is that I think what also makes Stanford unique is that the yellow ribbon that is available for those who have 100% post 9/11 GI Bill covers, this was a recent thing, Will, if you want to talk about this more too, but they recently covered, the matching covers all the tuition and required fees. So that is something that really makes Stanford stand out among all the other top business schools. And that is a huge difference. I know that when I was speaking to veterans, because it is not something that you see common.
You actually captured it perfectly. So thank you for calling that out. And so as we wrap up, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour. So if you could just think back to like a younger self, whether that is you as an applicant or you about to start your first term at the GSB, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, so I'll answer this first, Will, because it's top of mind again. I guess that's what I get for being the baby on the panel. So I think first and foremost, it's just to remember that excitement. I remember every instant of, I'll tell a quick fun story. So I was in a meeting and I wasn't allowed to have a cell phone in the place where I worked. And but somebody had been keeping an eye on my phone because I was hoping to hear from Stanford. And somebody came and grabbed me, hey, you got a missed phone call from a 650 number. And I, scrambled out of there like a bat out of hell back to my phone. And I had a voicemail from Kirsten Moss, the Dean of Admissions. It was a Wednesday morning. So I frantically, called her back and she said, hey, Austin, this is Kirsten, the Dean of Admissions. I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. You didn't have to tell me that. But she said, hey, I just want to let you know we're excited to welcome you to the Stanford class of 2022. And I have that moment in time is indelibly etched in my memory. And so on the days when things are, tough or busy here, and maybe I lose sight of that, I just try to remind myself of that moment in time, of just that pure, unfiltered excitement of knowing that I was going to my dream school. And so I just try to think about that from time to time while I'm here. And so I would encourage those of you that do get that magical phone call, really remember and cherish that moment, and take away that energy of that beautiful moment. And that will propel you quickly through here. And it's helped me keep that sense of awe and excitement as I walk around this exceptional place with exceptional people. And I'm really glad for that.
I'll answer quickly. I think I'm a little bit more of an introvert. I think everybody that, like, when you get to the GSB, you feel like you must be an introvert because everybody here is so outgoing. And so, I do really feel that I'm so much more of an introvert. Looking back on it, and I've thought about this a lot, since COVID's been an issue. I would say don't be afraid to reach out and have those one-on-ones with your classmates. I think that I probably didn't do that well enough. Whether it's just like, hey, get quick coffee with somebody, or have lunch with somebody. I don't think that I probably did it enough. And don't be afraid to reach out to your classmates and ask for those opportunities, because people are more than willing to do it. I think most of you probably just saw my dog. Literally last week, I got an invite from one of my classmates, like, hey, can we go walk our dogs together? And it's somebody that I haven't really spent a lot of time with. And so, I think for me, looking back on it, almost toward the tail end of the journey, I wish I would have done that a little more. I wish I would have met some more of my classmates one-on-one. I wish I would have connected a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'll just give my quick plug. And I'm kind of like Nate with the introvert thing. I definitely wish I could have contacted more people, especially now knowing what has happened with COVID. But I think my big advice is to just be open to the new experiences that you have. I know everyone does have a path and certain goals that they have here, which I would say stick to most of them, but there are also so many other opportunities out here that you probably have no idea that are here. Not only just in the business school program, but outside in the Stanford, the greater Stanford, because you do have access to as well to lectures within the law school. And if they have guest speakers in the medical school, you can definitely go cross programs and take courses across the street. And there are so many opportunities here that, just keep your eyes open for all of that, and be, if you do think something interests you and pokes your interest, and take a class in that, or ask one of your classmates about it, and just, take that extra step to learn a little bit more, because you never know if that's going to be something that you might want to pursue in the future.
And rounding out with the president of our organization, closing out strong, Nico.
What everyone said resonates with me 100%. The only thing I would add on is, this is the time for you to really develop yourself, figure out who you are, who you want to be, and just know that there's going to be a lot going on. There's going to be classmates wanting coffee chats, lunches, walks. There's going to be BBLs. There's going to be afternoon lectures combined with networking events. And it will get overwhelming, but it's okay to say no. It's okay to be like, I'm not gonna overextend myself. I want to take it and test things out, because you if anything, you'll have plenty of time. You'll have plenty of time to figure out what you want to do. Don't feel like you have to sign up for everything, because you can make this experience whatever you want it to make it to be.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, both for being here with us today, as well as your service, especially on Veterans Day. I think this is so appropriate for us to be able to share space together. So with everybody who's joined us, thank you for joining us as well. If you have questions, please feel free to contact us at the MBA admissions office. I just popped our contact information into the chat for everyone. We also have a mystanford.mba site. This is going to be a dashboard that, based on your interest, will help collect some of the things that might be of interest to you, as well as a dashboard that'll help you in checking, if you're applying, what is that progress check and what else can we provide to assist you through? So with that, stay safe. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.